Watch the destruction left as a pro-migrant mob attacks a hotel, housing immigration enforcement agents in Minneapolis. The National Guard has been called in to restore order after the killing of protester Alex Pretti sparked violent riots in the city. Protesters have been tagging and tracking ICE vehicles, following them to impede their operations to remove illegal migrants. Outlining the extent to which law and order has broken down in Minneapolis, Vice President J.D. Vance posted that off-duty ICE and customs officers had been identified out at dinner. Their details were then doxed to a mob who stormed the restaurant. Local police refused to respond, leaving it to federal law enforcement to ensure their safety. Donald Trump has made deportations a priority of his administration. ICE recruitment has soared as the force aims to meet its target of 1 million deportations a year. Democrat-run areas, however, have objected to the move, and groups have sought to obstruct immigration raids. Local authorities have often sided with protesters, opposing ICE operations. Minnesota Governor Tim Walz blamed Donald Trump for the chaos.
So my question is, what's the plan, Donald Trump? What is the plan? What do we need to do to get these federal agents out of our state? You thought fear, violence, and chaos is what you wanted from us, and you clearly underestimated the people of this state and nation. If it was the intention of Donald Trump to make an example of Minnesota, then I'm damn proud of the example that the world's seeing. We believe in law and order in this state. We believe in peace. And we believe that Donald Trump needs to pull these 3,000 untrained agents out of Minnesota before they kill another person. And we're up here telling another story of a Minnesotan just trying to live their life without the interference.
Trump pointed to success in removing migrants from Republican-run states, saying cooperation between federal and local agencies working together ensures smooth operations and minimal protest. Initially, after the shooting of Alex Pretti, the president launched into Walz, accusing him of inciting an insurrection by refusing to cooperate with ICE. Authorities accused Pretti of wanting to massacre Border Patrol agents. When it emerged this was unlikely to be the case and that ICE may be at fault for the killing, Trump struck a more conciliatory tone, saying he had spoken with Tim Walz and the pair had agreed to work together. Fox News revealed Monday that a cabal of far-left organisations who had tracked ICE agents had contributed to the skirmish which resulted in Pretti losing his life. The outlet reports socialist groups then leveraged the death to foment nationwide protests. Minneapolis residents held a vigil for Alex Pretti on Sunday. The nurse was also remembered at a hockey game. Nick Dunning, GB News.
This was the moment that the world is talking about. Now, Pretti can be seen filming as a federal agent pushes away one woman. He then moves between them, as you can see. He gets pepper sprayed. The woman raises, and he raises his left arm to shield himself from that pepper spray. Several agents then take hold of Pretti. This struggle ensues. Multiple agents wrestle him to the ground and resulting in him being shot. But it's this moment that is most contentious because the footage appears to show one of the agents removing a gun from Pretti and then stepping away from the group with it. So knowing that he didn't have the gun on his person, and that is just before he is shot, which is incredibly damning for particularly the agent who did shoot him dead. So his parents have called their son a nurse who cared for American veterans, a kind-hearted soul. They said in a statement, "We are heartbroken, but we are also very angry." They added that lies being told by the Trump administration are sickening, reprehensible and disgusting. Tonight, Minnesota Governor Tim Walz has reiterated his call for the ICE agents to pull out of Minneapolis. And he's also made this bizarre comparison to the situation in his area. Have a listen.
We have got children in Minnesota hiding in their houses, afraid to go outside. Many of us grew up reading that story of Anne Frank. Somebody's going to write that children's story about Minnesota. And there's one person who can end this now.
Do you agree with that comparison. I find it frankly bizarre. President Trump has come out swinging. They said that Alex Pretti was carrying a gun and he assaulted officers. And here was United States Secretary of Homeland Security Kristi Noem earlier.
This individual who came with weapons and ammunition to stop a law enforcement operation of federal law enforcement officers committed an act of domestic terrorism. That's the facts.
So that was Kristi Noem speaking yesterday, but in the last few moments, President Trump has spoken out. He's blamed the shooting of Alex Pretti and Renee Good, who was shot dead in the same state 2 weeks ago. He said in actually a very unusually formatted post for President Trump. He said, as a result of this Democrat-ensued chaos, these people lost their lives. He went on to call the leaders of Minnesota to cooperate with the administration rather than resist and stoke the flames of division, chaos and violence. Let's get more with Newsmax presenter Bianca Della Garza now. Bianca, what a pleasure to talk to you again, but it's a shame it's under such awful circumstances. I've changed my position slightly on this than how I felt yesterday. I tried not to rush to a conclusion because I think it's really easy to do so, and everybody wants to pile in on these stories and weaponise them and politicise them. What's your opinion on the death, particularly of this man, now that we've seen this footage in slow motion and in all its detail?
Well, first off, Bev, always a pleasure to be with you and your viewers. I think tomorrow, as many will be waking up across the pond and here, there will be even more layers to this story. So as you showed that video, I'm glad you also put the clip of Tim Walz, who clearly is seizing on this. What he said about Anne Frank, many are already saying is not the right tone, insult to Holocaust survivors. So we leave the political aside. And I think some of the officials who have come out today in some of the Sunday morning programs, you know, Todd Blanche, number 2 at the DOJ, was pretty measured, I think, because you do look at that video and there are many questions about the timing of all of this. But he said, like, you can't look at 10-second video and make a judgment exactly on what happened. There obviously is a huge investigation that has to be carried out. And we know from Gregory Bovino that the officers will be taken out of Minnesota and be put most likely on administrative leave. Kash Patel, the head of the FBI, Bev, saying today, you do not get to attack law enforcement in this country without repercussions. Of course, the question is, was it the life of Alex Pretti that had to be lost by attacking law enforcement? Bovino also saying the suspect put himself in that situation. And if we may just kind of go down that road, there's been some troubling information coming out as late of just an hour ago that the Lieutenant Governor, Peggy Flanagan, may have been participating in this Signal chat, Bev, which is telling people where ICE agents are. So she also said, put your bodies on the line. So if there is a sense of bringing down the temperature, we certainly haven't seen it with some of the officials. Now, I think that this is a tragedy, and I think here in America, we are going to see this, just as we saw with the shooting of Renee Good, be a real moment here and an inflection point that we cannot underscore, because even if it comes out that this officer felt that he feared for his life, the credibility of ICE and the credibility is now called into question. But we cannot forget that these people on the streets are organized. There are food drops, they're radio command. They're actually going after regular people saying, who are you? Are you with ICE? And putting regular citizens who are just driving down the streets, they're stopping them and asking them for information. And with gatherings now happening in Chicago amid a blizzard, a huge storm there, and an autonomous zone in Minnesota, Bev, it does feel a little reminiscent of George Floyd again. And it does feel that there is, of course, as you know, agents of chaos who have descended on the city, and yet another American caught in the fray, his name, Alex Pretti.
And a lot of people are starting to speculate, Bianca, what the implications might be for the midterm elections, because they see President Trump as the lieutenant to these troops on the ground, which is perhaps accurate in some degree. But also, my feeling is that that was one man who shot that one man. And to extrapolate the ambitions of ICE, which are precisely what President Trump was voted into office to do, which is to get illegal migrants who've committed crimes out of the country. How does he manage that going forward? It's very difficult for the president and also the entire administration to get the balance between those two ambitions right as they run up to the midterms.
I think you're right, and I think you're making an excellent point. And even before the shooting of Renee Good, Bev, there was some internal polling that the White House was privy to that said perhaps the immigration message was not favorable to the midterms. I think now sitting here, if you ask me, around after midnight, January 26th, and you and I are talking, I think there's a ways to go. I think we've already heard Democrats who are now going to say they potentially could shut down the government. They don't want to fund ICE. Amy Klobuchar, who is running, as you know, to replace Tim Walz to be the governor of Minnesota after he announced he would not be running, has come out slamming ICE today, saying they don't have the training. So the Capitol Hill swamp will use this as a cudgel for the midterms. I don't know. I think it's too early to say how much it will be a breaking point or a win or a loss for the right. I think that part of what we're seeing here is high emotion, a lot of disingenuous media when it came to the 5-year-old boy. And I think everyone needs to take a beat. There are other things that people vote on, obviously, just like where you live, and it's kitchen table issues. And if it comes to light that massive fraud ripped off $19 billion of taxpayers' money, are they going to weigh that against getting them out in not just Minnesota, but other states? It might not be as disastrous as the Democrats are really hoping for. And I think it's sad that they actually want to make this something, such a weapon, because there were hundreds of thousands of children that went missing under Joe Biden's open border. So if they care about people and humanity, the most innocent people and children who were trafficked across the border, there was zero empathy for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Bianca, thank you so much. Fascinating insight, as always. Newsmax presenter Bianca De La Garza there. Let's talk now to former advisor to Barack Obama, Spencer Critchley, about this. Spencer, thank you for joining Late Show Live on a Sunday night. Really appreciate it. So how does President Trump handle this now going forward? Because I think there is probably a difference between the killing of Nicole Good, who was sat behind the wheel of a car, who apparently was using that car as a vehicle, allegedly, and this guy who had nothing more than a mobile phone in his hand.
First of all, I just want to emphasize I was an advisor to both Obama campaigns, but not to President Obama himself personally. I just don't like to hype my credentials. How Trump handles this, I think, is the least of our concerns right now. And I think it's very important not to normalize and legitimize the situation in the United States by pretending this is some kind of normal continuation of left versus right politics, where the left has its narrative and the right has its narrative, and voters are left to try to judge who's telling something closer to the truth. This is not a political left versus political right issue. This is a pro-democracy versus anti-democracy issue. And I think what we're seeing here in Minneapolis is just the latest instantiation of that conflict. And that's why there are so many Republicans of conscience who have spent their lives supporting conservative Republican causes, often people who are very far to the right, and who are vehemently opposed to Donald Trump for precisely this kind of reason. So I think if we discuss this in terms of political tactics, we're almost dignifying it. And this is without prejudging the results of any investigation, whether of the Renee Good shooting or the Alex Pretti shooting, much as I think that the evidence we have looks terrible. But even without prejudging it, the flagrant Orwellian lies that have been coming out of the administration are all too typical of what I believe actually amounts to an attack on democracy.
But if you're talking about democracy, President Trump was voted in very much in order to stop illegal migration on the southern border. And seeing these images of illegal migrants who have committed crimes being seized and deported is a very powerful deterrent, and so powerful that he has solved that issue on the southern border. And trust me, as a Brit, we look with some admiration of being able to know exactly who is and who is not coming into your country. That's something that we aspire to in the UK. So how is it not democratic to support a government who wants to deport people who shouldn't be here, who've committed crime?
No, it's entirely legitimate for people to vote their beliefs on immigration, and some people will be in favor of stricter enforcement and some people will be in favor of more liberal enforcement. That's not at all the issue here. Donald Trump is turning ICE, the grossly badly trained and apparently now deliberately recruited to fit a certain profile ICE agents, turning them into his own private police force. So what they're doing has nothing to do with legitimate border enforcement. To have the Border Patrol, for example, working within the interior of the country violates its mission, and they are not trained for that mission, and we see the results of that lack of training every day. They have no skills, apparently, in policing, and yet they're out there trying to police America's streets. Again, to set some context here, of course people are free to vote for the candidate they prefer, and I might dislike everything that candidate stands for, but if he wins elections as Donald Trump did, that's part of the price of living in a democracy and having freedom to vote yourself for candidates you prefer. But we also have seen again and again democracies brought to an end after a legitimate democratic election, which turns out to be the last fair election. And another way we lose context with this is we overlooked the, giant asteroid approaching Earth-sized problem that Donald Trump attempted to overthrow the election last time. And people just sort of move on, or many people do, as if that's the kind of stuff that happens in politics. Trying to bring our democracy to an end is not the kind of thing that happens in normal politics. And so once somebody tries to do something like that, and Trump did it over a period of many months from multiple directions, it wasn't just January 6th, that was just the culmination, and he continues to try to do it. Every time he tells the lie about how he supposedly won the 2020 election, for example. That cannot be ignored. That is not, I don't like his policies.
Yeah.
That's, I like democracy, and I don't like people who are trying to tear it down.
Okay, Spencer, thank you so much. Former advisor to Obama campaigns, Spencer Critchley there. Thank you for joining me this evening. We're learning that the Wall Street Journal has spoken to President Trump today, and they have published an interview with him saying that his administration is reviewing everything and will come out with a determination. Reviewing everything and will come out with a determination. He's also signalled a willingness to eventually withdraw immigration enforcement officials from the Minneapolis area. He said, at some point, we will leave. They've done a phenomenal job. We'll leave a different group of people there for the financial fraud. Let me talk to my panel here about this. So when he's talking there about the financial fraud, Simon, he's referring to the fact that in Minneapolis, in the state of Minnesota, there are a large number of Somali immigrants, about 50 to 80,000, I believe. And they have been identified as playing a part in some major taxpayer fraud, with 90 being charged so far. Some would say that President Trump is just distracting there from the issue that surrounds the ICE agents and the controversy. Is he doing that?
Well, others would say that the governor and the mayor of Minneapolis and the governor of the state are trying to distract from the fraud by focusing on the ICE issues. So politics does play a role. But look, we can't let the fact that these people happen to be Somali detract from the fact that they were pulling huge scams and stealing billions of dollars. That should still be prosecuted, whether they were Somali or French or from any other place.
Yeah. Angelina, what do you make of this situation this evening as we sit here? This is really bad for President Trump. This killing in particular is worse, I think, than the first. Is that how you see it?
I mean, most definitely. I'm seeing a lot of different Nick Shirley types. I'm not going to say Nick Shirley directly, but these independent journalists who go just as viral. I saw one clip today where he was like, you know what, in the case of Renee Good, I side with ICE, but in this, I see it with my eyes. Like, you can't tell me that was a justified shooting. And I was actually taken back to hear that from these type of influencers. So you're seeing a shift too in that. Trump did take a change in his narrative, saying that there will be a full investigation, which I think is good. It's been bad for him to really just defend, I think, Kristi Noem here. He's making a mistake politically. There really does need to be a transparent investigation. Like, everybody saw this video. Don't gaslight us. Don't tell us what we didn't see, right? So I think that Trump really should be holding Kristi Noem a bit more accountable.
Yeah, I think I agree, Paul Cox. How about you? I mean, I know this is a big American story, but I'm sure it's made the headlines over in the UK because President Trump is, well, President Trump. And I think Angelina makes a really good point. In an effort to control the narrative, everybody from every side jumps to be the first person to air when these stories happened. It's happened yesterday. And a lot of people think, actually, if they'd seen the footage, maybe Kristi Noem wouldn't have come out and said what she said yesterday. She should have waited. And now the president's slightly having to row back on it. It's a mess.
I think associated to Donald Trump, obviously with the ICE thing as well, because here we've got a huge issue, and we are, many of us, envious of what Donald Trump has been able to achieve. However, our sensibilities as British people make it very squeamish for us to see some of the things that have gone on, particularly with regards to firearms. I mean, there's a couple of things there that blow my mind as a British guy, and that's, first of all, if there were 12 police officers coming at me with guns, I would not be fighting back. I'd be calling for my mum and asking for them just do whatever you need to do. I would not be bringing a gun to a protest. So there are a whole bunch of things going on there for me that could be sensibly debated. The upshot of this is there's 2 people dead. One of them, from what I can tell, in my personal opinion, used her car as a weapon. This guy had his gun taken away from him during the scuffle, and although he was putting up a fight, I'm not sure he needed to have multiple bullets put into him. Look, it's very difficult. I very much support Donald Trump and what he's trying to do with ICE. Just from a British perspective, I find it very difficult to come to terms with the way they're going about it. And they're going about it in the way that's relatively normal in the United States. It becomes incredibly political. I wouldn't want to get drawn straight away. I never make comment on this stuff, on X, I mean. And, you know, you're asking me to now, and of course I will. But I wouldn't just jump to anything, even if it seems incredibly obvious immediately. I always think there's a dead person there. We're not used to seeing dead people on TV either, by the way, in Britain. That's unusual for us. That stuff doesn't happen either, Bev.